this big event planned. It involves the U.S. Navy, the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard. Our city is going to get its very first Fleet Week. Thank you. It's November 5th through 12th. More than 1,000 sailors, Marines, Coast Guardsmen will arrive in the Bayou City for a full week of ship tours, public events, community outreach, all part of the Navy's nationwide celebration of its 250th anniversary. Reda Hicks is here to tell us about it, the co-chair of the organizing committee for Fleet Week Houston. This has been going on in New York forever, but this is really new to us. Who came up with this idea?
It has been going on forever. In fact, Fleet Week is the largest scale and oldest community outreach tool that the Navy has. They've been happening in New York and LA and San Francisco since the 80s. But a couple of years ago, in advance of the 250th anniversary, the Navy really started thinking about what are the maritime communities that we really haven't engaged with as much. And Houston, of course, was top of list for them. So it's actually been nearly 2 years in the making, the conversations and the thought process. And honestly, we have a very uniquely shaped port, so there was some conversation about how to make it happen. But here we are, very excited.
Port of Houston where they're all going to come?
Yes, that's
See,
right.
that was my question.
Yeah.
We don't seem
Same.
like the kind of city where the fleet can come in. I see it in San Francisco. I see it in New York. Was that an obstacle, or am I thinking of Fleet Week wrong?
It was a challenge in terms of where to put the ships, because one major component of Fleet Week is giving the public the opportunity to go get on one of those vessels and take a tour. And it's not only that our port is shaped interestingly, we're 55 miles inland, but also to get to the heart of the port, you have to go under two bridges, which are shorter than many Navy vessels. So a lot of thought had to go into what can we get close in and what might need to be a little bit further out.
So who is sitting at the table when you're having these conversations about what that looks like here in Houston?
Absolute ton of people. On the sea services side, because Fleet Week celebrates, Frank said it, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. So each of those three services has people at the table, and then an entire collection of local people. So the official host of Fleet Week Houston is Mayor Whitmire. So the city is very involved, but we also have Houston First at the table and Greater Houston Partnership at the table, and a ton of community-based organizations that work with veterans and military families, all of the higher ed institutions, the business community, all of our sports teams, the rodeo, everyone's at the table.
Okay, so how many boats are going to come in for this, and how are you going to get them through the ship channel with all that traffic that's waiting in line to get in now?
We are expecting 3 Navy vessels, so 2 smaller vessels that will come all the way up to City Dock, and then an LPD, which is one of the really big ones that carries Marines, going to Bayport. And we are coordinating very closely with the Houston Pilots Association and the port, and they have come up with a parade of ships plan. So the ships will line up, those 3 Navy vessels, but also a couple of coastie vessels that are going to join them in the parade from Galveston. And they'll line up and they'll come in through the port, and they will have coordinated all of the traffic to make sure that vessels aren't nearby so that people can see it when the vessels are coming in.
We're calling it Houston Fleet Week, but is it really regional? I mean, wouldn't it make more sense that it's in cities, towns along the water as opposed to in here, or is it really being focused for Houston?
So the primary focus is Houston because that's where the invitation came from. But actually, we have over 80 official events on the calendars, and several of them are in other maritime communities in Greater Houston. So really exciting. We have, of those 80 events, I think 18 of them are very large, free, public-facing events, and some of them will bring people downtown, and some of them will bring them to Sylvan Beach or the city of Seabrook or all these other communities that are also involved in the maritime industry.
And so it runs from the 5th through the 12th. So talk to us a little bit more about some of the fun things people can expect. And if people really are excited about celebrating, our service members and what the Navy and the Coast Guard and, the Marine Corps have done for us.
Mm-hmm. So all of the public events are listed on fleetweekhouston.com. So you can go and see the whole calendar and choose what you want to go to. Like I said, everything free, public, family friendly. You can bring your kids. And we have a whole host of different events. Some of them are intended to showcase particular sea services. So, for example, there's a demonstration happening at Sylvan Beach that's very focused on the Marine Corps, and they're going to be doing an amphibious landing demonstration with their hovercraft on the beach.
Wow.
There's events planned in Kemah to highlight the Coast Guard, and of course the Navy will be all over the place. What's interesting about Fleet Week is it really is multidimensional. So there are field trip groups going to those vessels, and then service members are headed out to schools to demonstrations. There's things happening in our museums and in the medical center and all of our higher ed institutions, and then things like community service projects and concerts and opportunities to interact with lots of different components of the sea services that people don't even think about.
Is there any recruitment going on?
So not officially, right? Fleet Week is an educational tool of the Navy to help people understand what our forces are, what they do, what their missions are. But it is a natural sort of byproduct. So there will be Navy recruiters that will have like tents at the big events if people have questions, same with the Marine Corps, same with the Coast Guard. But it's not an active recruitment. It's really more about let us help you understand how we keep you safe, how we keep your commerce moving, how we move through your communities. Because at the end of the day, every single one of those people in uniform is a person. And right now they're serving our country. But the thing about Fleet Week is it's also a showcase of our city to show those 1,000 or so men and women what it might look like to be a Houstonian when they take off that uniform.
Okay, question about those in uniform. So are we housing all of them, or are they staying on their ships? Dumb question, but I'm curious.
It's a little bit of both, because the people who come on the vessels, they have their bunk right there. But we are expecting components from Corpus Christi and Fort Worth and Shreveport and some of the specialized units that are coming over land, and they will be staying in our various hotels around the city based on the part of the city they'll be interacting with most.
Yeah, there's aircraft, right?
Yes. In fact, one of our major public events is a static installation at Ellington in partnership with the Lone Star Flight Museum. So people will have the opportunity, if they want to go to Ellington and see all sorts of different naval aircraft. And then there will be some flyovers as well that people will have the opportunity to see.
Am I thinking of the right Broadway show, On the Town or something? Am I feeling with the Navy people in Times Square and their dancing? That's what I think of when I think of Fleet Week. How off am I here?
You're not that off, Ernie, because so the thing about a Fleet Week is for all of the various events, all those service members in uniform. So people will be going about their business all over Houston and see, men and women in white uniforms for the Navy and in the khakis for the Marine Corps, and the Coasties will be in blue, and they'll be like, oh, there are lots of visiting service members here, and they will be going to concerts, and they will, be showing up at our schools and in our museums, and also even when they're on their free time, they'll be shopping at the Galleria in their uniforms. So they really kind of will be everywhere.
That's amazing. And so, Rita, seeing this event through and going through the whole process, has there been anything that's really stood out to you seeing it through?
So I've been in Houston for 20 years. I know my city is special, but watching how all of the different local stakeholders came together and just came with a big bunch of yes, and how are we going to figure this out together, and how are we going to make that special, really struck me, because it's a small world, Fleet Week. I have mentors at several of the other Fleet Weeks, and they don't have that same sort of attitude and level of connection. And so it really just reinforced to me how special Houston is, that all of the stakeholders that needed to be at the table came readily and willing to help. And when we figured out where holes were, we just invited more people to fill the holes.
Am I right? You're a military spouse, correct?
I am. My husband did 22 years in the Army. And we are both still very involved supporting military and veteran families in Texas. I will tell you, it has been a major education of me, the Navy vocabulary, because the words they use, the ranks they use, wildly different.
I'm curious, though, if that brings a unique perspective of how you see our military engaging and educating the civilian population.
So my family is a bit unique, too, because I was married to my husband the last 9 years of his active duty service, and he went where the Army sent him, and I was here in Houston. So I had one foot in this community and one foot sort of following my husband wherever he went and understanding that community. And so I really always root the conversation in military people are people. They have spouses, they have kids, they're pursuing educations, they're pursuing careers. And when you think about the people who serve us that way, it kind of brings them off the pedestal and helps you kind of understand their key challenges in ways that are really tangible. I'll give you an example. One of our major day of service for Fleet Week is a very large-scale project with the food bank. And we chose that because military families in Texas have the highest rate of food insecurity in the country, because the base of our military are young service members with young families who make very little money and have to figure out how to make ends meet And so, shining a light on that need really brings it home that like, oh, these are young people, defending our freedoms, and we need to figure out how to better support them. And policymakers are always having conversations about how to make life easier. But in the meantime, it is these local communities coming up with really granular resources to fill the gaps.
And this is going to be somewhat in conjunction with Veterans Day?
That's right. So we will be celebrating not only Veterans Day, but also November 10th is the Marine Corps' 250th birthday. So lots of big things happening. And, we are one of the 2 largest veteran communities in the country. So it's actually very special to have the active duty service members coming here and mixing with a community that has a larger veteran family population than most state capitals.
Here, Houston.
Here in Houston.
That's amazing.
Take me back something bigger to understand when we talk about Fleet Week. Can anyone have one anytime they want one, or is somebody coordinating this? We're having Fleet Week. It is sanctioned by the U.S. military. It is official. Our Fleet Week is happening here. How does that work? Who is Fleet Week?
So Fleet Week is a partnership between the local community and the Navy, but a formal invitation by a community has to be extended to the Navy, and the Navy has to accept. So Mayor Whitmire, reached out to Mayor Cottle once we heard there was potentially an interest in coming here, and formally invited the Navy to bring a Fleet Week to Houston. That invitation was accepted by Admiral Cottle, who was the head of Fleet Forces at the time. That's the organization that runs all the ships. He has since been promoted to be the chief of naval operations, so the top of the Navy. But that's how it went. Admiral Cottle accepted the invitation. That sent the wheels in motion to choose a date and start the planning.
And your sponsors, you have some pretty heavy hitter sponsors, because it's not cheap to bring 1,000 people in uniform and all those boats here.
That's right. And we could not possibly be doing it without not only sponsors, and we have many very generous sponsors, but also a whole lot of local organizations that are giving time, talent, and treasure to making sure all of these events that are happening are really incredible. I mean, it's 80 official events, but then lots of communities are bolting on their things. That doesn't count things like ship tours. That doesn't count things like field trips. And that all requires a whole lot of sort of local coordination.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is it the first of many to come, or are we a one and done?
We are hoping it will become a serial. I will tell you, and speaking with the Navy, the weekend, our announcement about Fleet Week Houston came out on a Friday, and that weekend the Navy was inundated with interest calls. People were so excited. This is not only the first one for Houston, but it's the first one for Texas. And there was so much excitement, and it has been such an easy process sort of with the infrastructure we have here for large events. They've already said, if this one is a success, which I feel certain it will be, then we'll be put in the regular rotation. Probably it won't be an annual event like it is in New York. Most Fleet Weeks are biannual or every 3 years, but I think if this one goes well, then we can look forward to many more Fleet Weeks in Houston.
Now, Rita, is there any way, perhaps somebody's listening to this, like as I sit here, I think of my cousin, Andrea de la Garza, who was in the Navy and she served in the Navy. And, is there any way people that might have family members that have served can also honor them? Or how does that work at all? Like go to the events? Was that what you would recommend?
I would. And what I have found, because we actually went and visited a couple of other Fleet Weeks in the run-up to planning ours, and it is actually really special for those sort of multi-generational families to plan ahead and go do ship tours together or visit the expo that we're planning for downtown together to sort of it provides a springboard for conversation. A lot of the older generations of service members in particular have talked less about their service, but when you have assets right in front of you, what they have found is it actually triggers conversation from uncles, aunts, grandparents about this is what life was like when I was doing this.
You keep talking about all the events that are going to happen, and I at first feel a little overwhelmed. And I'm looking at your website, and it's broken up, and there's so many different things from Fleet Week at St. Arnold's to music to receptions to dances to expos to drone shows. But you laid it out in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming, which I appreciate looking. There's even a 5K run.
Right.
There's a lot going on. How do you suggest people navigate in and figure out what they're going to see and not see? And how do you make sure you get the most out of it without missing what you don't want to miss?
That's a great question. So I think it's thinking about, so the calendar on the website is broken out by date. That's one way to look at it. If you have only the weekend available, then you probably want to focus on those events. But it's also, I want to see the airplanes, I'm headed to Ellington. I want to focus on the Marine Corps, I'm headed to
That's
Sylvan
smart,
Beach.
yep.
I want to see a little bit of everything, I'm headed to the Expo because all of the services will have something there. And there will also be a lot of special Houston flair in the Expo, like the Dynamo and the Rockets and the Rodeo will all be there to sort of engage in that conversation with the services. If you love music, so the Navy is bringing several band assets, and every one of those concerts includes a Navy band performance. If that's of interest to you, then definitely that's something that you should check out.
So Kevin on YouTube says, first Fleet Week for Texas? Makes sense. Take that, Dallas. I don't guess there's anything in Dallas.
If it's hard to get boats in Houston, it's definitely hard to get boats in Dallas.
San Antonio, and they're all right there on the Riverwalk.
That's right. So, but we are lucky. I'm sure Galveston wants a piece of this. Is there any chance that there's going to be anything going on down at Galveston?
The Parade of Ships will have a viewing point on Pelican Island, and we're working with the City of Galveston, Texas A&M Galveston, a couple of other key stakeholders down there to plan a viewing party, because that is actually going to be the best vantage point to see that Parade of Ships when they're coming in. And then we've also, like I said, tried to have some activities that are in those southern communities in Kemah, in Seabrook, so that people have easier access from Galveston. But we really have focused sort of up in Houston, since the port is kind of the centerpiece of our Fleet Week.
And did you say the Texas Navy is playing a role?
They are. In fact, the Texas Navy is one of the hosts of that viewing party at Seawolf Park.
There you go.
Well, there you go, Admiral Billingsley.
Admiral Billingsley, absolutely.
Reda Hicks is a co-chair of the organizing committee for Fleet Week Houston. Reda, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you for having me.
And one more time, where can people go?
www.fleetweekhouston.com.
Excellent.